Okay, so we're going to hear from a group of individuals for our second client keynote that uses a DMP to drive revenue for fashion brands and Black Friday in particular. So very topical. I'm going to welcome to the stage Hannah Kimuyu, Director of Paid Media, Data Science from Audience Insights, as well as Wojciech Bednarz, Data Insights and Senior Strategy Manager from Greenlight. Please welcome. Thank you.
Great. Hello everyone. God, can't see. So, hi everyone. My name's Hannah. I've been working for Greenlight Digital for about 13 years now. I'm sure most of you have heard of us. We've been around for about 16 years. So we're an independent digital marketing agency. We do everything from a digital point of view, but we also have a commerce team as well. I'm mainly responsible for biddable media or paid media, but in the last year, 18 months, I've been working very closely with Wojciech and his team as we launched a data science and audience insight team.
So my name is Wojciech. I work in Greenlight. I work in Greenlight since like 6 years. Last year, I was focused mainly on implementation of DMP within the agency and as well across our client base. And as well, we do a lot of different things around data and how we can squeeze like a lot of information from what DMP gives us. So we developed like products around it, and this is what we're gonna share with you today.
So in terms of what we're going to go through, we won't go through in too much detail. I'm hoping this presentation is going to be shared with you guys afterwards. If you just click through Wojciech, I'll just take them through. So, I mean, as I've already said, you know, been around for about 16 years. I guess worked with across a whole bunch of different verticals, but one of our key verticals is the retail space, and that's one of the main reasons why we got into investing into a data management platform. I've mentioned all this, so we'll keep on going. And then in terms of technology, one of the other key reasons why we went down the route of investing into a DMP is because we build a lot of technology ourselves. So we already have, like I'm sure a lot of people here, have lots of data, but a lot of the technology that we've built has been around understanding audiences, not necessarily from a DMP perspective, but purely from a first-party point of view. So some of the technologies here, Plover, Bamboo, and Oracle, which are actually all SEO technologies, focus on understanding that information in terms of how we can improve our optimization from an organic search perspective. So the reason why we invested into a DMP was actually down to this guy here, Danny Haynes. I'm going to point him out. So Danny used to be our head of display a few years ago, and before he left he said, watch this video. So I did, and it was some guy in the States with a whiteboard drawing out what a DMP, what it is and how it works. And we were about 2 years into our programmatic journey. We'd done a good job, certainly could have done better. Sorry, Danny. Sorry. Yeah. But we wanted to understand, well, you know, our clients got lots of information. We have obviously a lot of data ourselves, but how can we personalize this experience? You know, the programmatic space is exciting, but it's also daunting, and it's certainly a difficult sell, or it certainly was a very difficult sell then. So the DMP, for me, watching this video, helped me to understand how we could, I guess, piece the story together in a much more concise way. But being also the owner of all the other biddable channels got me thinking about how we could start using this data across all of our other paid for channels. Coincidentally, at the time, Google was also starting to think about audiences, and that was creeping in. So it felt like a perfect journey. I then had a random conversation with Wojciech about some work he was doing with one of our largest clients at the time, Nespresso. So we grew their business quite significantly over about 6-7 years. And Wojciech decided upon himself to take the horrible task of trying to optimize all their first-party data, looking at both the B2B and the B2C products. So it was kind of a random meeting of the minds. But when we started to think about this seriously, I guess there were 3 areas that we wanted to try and manage. And I'm sure, again, this is something that you're all looking at. So I guess the case of fragmented data, multiple audiences, and no consistent user journey. So we partnered with Lotame, and we put them through a bit of a grueling process. We also, do you want to go back a step?
Sorry.
We also spoke with the likes of Crux and Adobe, all the other usual players. But we felt that Lotame were the best partner for us in terms of cultural fit, and more importantly, having someone that was really going to help us in this journey. It's not an easy task investing into a DMP, and it's certainly a very expensive task investing into a DMP. But it's important that you have the right partner and certainly have the right team and investment yourselves. So in terms of the key areas that we've started to look at, it's been about 18 months now since we've signed with these guys. But the key areas that we're already starting to see value within our own business, but also with our clients as well. And one of the important things that I probably should note is when we're thinking about the DMP, we're not just purely coming from a programmatic space. So although that's where it started, the data management platform impacts every part of our business right now. So it's fair to say that the DMP is almost heart of the agency, which is an amazing thing. And it's certainly been a slog, but I'm personally very happy with the place that it's at right now. Some of the key areas we're making an impact is naturally advanced audience insights and analytics. So going back to the panel you've just seen there and the conversations around second-party data, I think one of the key areas we're already starting to see that impact our clients. So clients like, say, Dixon's, where they have a whole host of brands that they work with, and it's about trading that information to understand where's the best place to publish content from a content syndication perspective, as an example. But also being able to deliver those insights through maybe a pitch process. So the DMP has actually become a key part of how we pitch our business. It's almost become a bit of a USP for us, where we're able to go in and on the odd occasion, a prospect I should say rather, is happy for us to implement the pixel immediately during the pitch process. So as part of that delivery, we're able to show them exactly who their audiences are, as opposed to who they think they are. I've said that, I guess. Also, personalized content. So again, these guys were talking about that just now. It's definitely not something I would say we're advanced at, but we're certainly at the stage now with our own website. So the greenlightdigital.com domain, when the new site goes live, anyone hitting the site will be hit with personalized content. And we're now starting to look at that from a one specific client point of view, a retail client, where the DMP is central to every component of their digital marketing. So in some instances, we're building audiences around how we implement email, affiliates, again, programmatic, but also CRM. So again, you're getting that personalized experience, and it's not a straightforward process, and Wojciech's gonna give you guys a bit more insight into how we're working with all the different partners. And in some instances, we have been, I guess, integration firsts for Lotame, which is great, and don't mind being the guinea pig. But again, it's quite a difficult task. And I guess the obvious, data unification in terms of getting all your first-party data under one roof. And then lastly, which has been an interesting process because it's effectively working with a traditional creative team. We're saying, when you guys put together brand guidelines, tone of voice documentation, where does this information come from? And you're speaking a very different language. They're used to audience personas, which speaks a very brand-like language. It's very fluffy. Apologies if there's any creatives in the room. It doesn't necessarily tell you anything in terms of who that person actually is, but it's given them actual audience insight or audience data to help them translate that, and then again bring that back to documents like tone of voice, brand guidelines, that kind of thing. So this has actually been really successful for brands like New Balance, where we manage those guys across a whole bunch of markets in Europe. But again, it's interesting for us to talk to a brand about their own tone of voice, where they've developed themselves over a number of years, especially someone like New Balance that's been around since the early 1900s. But in that instance, you're showing the differentiation between how they should be speaking to their customers in the UK versus Germany. And then lastly, overlap analysis, which is this diagram on the right-hand side. Which, do you want to explain it?
Yeah, so essentially one of the use cases for DMP is that it has a courier file, which essentially is a file of raw data, which gives you the memberships of audiences of your clients. So one of the things we can do is graphs like this, which will tell us a story that, you might think that, okay, I knew that, but actually this story is based on data, and it tells us what's the membership and affinity between different product categories for a client. And imagine that it can be sort of any query you can ask. In this particular example, we wanted to understand better whether people who buy men running shoes also buy men lifestyle shoes. But when you look actually at the affinity, which is the line here, which essentially the thinner the line and the longer, the less of affinity it is. So we can see right off the bat that actually it seems like immediately it's two different audiences. And this is just like very simple example how we can explain, for example, to clients, what's the value of you understanding fully the first party data, just using simple reports that are available, the data available from DMP that we managed to visualize in this manner. And some of the reports we present for clients as well. So as I said, we look, probably audience analytics is one of our core use cases currently, and this is how we use the DMP. We made a product out of it. We sell it to clients as a product. They are very interested in it. So this is just one of the examples how we would, for example, look into users who look at lifestyle shoes and they happen to be broken between men and female, and so that's one of the examples. So in terms of what channels and how we integrate, so obviously if there are users of DMP, some of these things you will think they're very obvious, and I don't think it's anything out of ordinary here. But just to explain you, so we're trying obviously to take advantage of AdWords, because that's one of our bread and butter activities. So obviously understanding this audiences better would be very beneficial to our clients. So obviously we try to onboard AdWords in terms of brand and generic traffic. We try to onboard it as well in terms of campaign level traffic. We obviously do all the display tracking of the campaigns, impression and clicks trackers and conversions. Email, so that's been discussed here quite a bit. Also, we're looking into as well, which some clients, obviously, they don't take full advantage of this, is using a data layer. So essentially, it's a code that is added to your site that can, in real time, make a query to your CRM database and can recognize you as a client. So, and it can be any data sort of about you. It can be your age, gender, your last purchase, your average order value, and then this data can be scooped by DMP, and then we can build audiences around it. So this is something that we look into as well currently. Obviously, you need quite a big client who is interested in this sort of things, because it does require sort of a bit of work on the client side. And then obviously we also look into onboarding the mobile and app traffic, and all this has one purpose, to sort of try to stitch all those different things together to understand better the clients and make the full advantage of the first party audiences.
So Wojciech's already mentioned that we've built a technology behind this. So one of the key challenges that we found in the first, I guess, few months was product adoption. And to be honest, with any technology in most businesses, we have enough systems to log into on a daily basis. The Lotame platform is an amazing platform, but I think it's fair to say that you need someone like Wojciech who speaks data to really navigate through the platform and utilize it effectively. What I didn't want to do was get to the end of 12 months and have a conversation with our team and say, well, actually, our utilization was terrible. Or in every QBR, they were like, you should be here, but you should be here in terms of your progression, but you're actually here. So one of the things that Wojciech took upon himself was, well, how do we engage as many people within the agency? And as I said before, it's not about this being a tool just for the programmatic team. It's about this tool impacting every part of the business. So Wojciech effectively created this platform here. It's called Prism. And what it does, it takes all the information, and we can look at you as a particular client, and we can break that down into product category level, for example, or market level. We have a lot of international clients, so that's very useful there. Or we can start to cross-reference the data. So a lot of our clients are retail businesses, and a lot of those retail businesses sell fashion. So rather than looking at a specific client, the one we'll talk about later, Superdry, what we're starting to see, there's a lot of affinities with what happens with a Superdry customer, but what also may happen with a New Balance customer. So what Prisium gives us is that kind of cross-client understanding from an analysis or an insight point of view. It also means that this data is easily digestible. So when you're putting this platform in front of the copy team, going back to my example before, and they're trying to use this data to start thinking about things like tone of voice, it makes more sense of them, and it speaks more of their language as opposed to it just being lots of numbers and pie charts, as an example.
So essentially what it is it's just taking, using the API of Lotame and taking the raw data, and then we essentially, do what data, whatever we want to do, and we present it in a bit more digestible format. Because for those of you who obviously use Lotame, once you log into, for example, APR, it gives you a lot of information, but maybe not necessarily in a format you might find useful. So I think that it's very important to, and as you probably know, Lotame has a lot of third-party data providers and a lot of data. So it's very important to understand that data and sift through it and find the best things that are in there and try to bring it here. And essentially this platform allows us to bring whatever data is needed. It's very accessible. It's an internal tool. You don't have to even log into Lotame. It just pulls in real time, uses the API and pulls whatever report you need, and it can be for planning, it can be for post-campaign analysis. And essentially it allows us as well to bring like third-party data and mix it with Lotame data in the background. So it's very flexible in that way. And essentially why we build it, obviously I don't want to say that it's bad what is available within Lotame, but for our users, for our use, we wanted something more. So we built this platform. It allows us to pick unlimited numbers of verticals as graphs. It's fully customizable. It's dedicated. It's open source, so we don't use any sort of paid platform to generate it, like Tableau or anything like it. I will explain later what it is. And essentially, it's taking a full advantage of API. And I think in future, what we will do, we'll probably look into making it client-facing products so that they can see whatever audiences we created for them, and it's kind of self-manage. So, okay, I need to see into audience A that you created, okay. Here's the login to the platform, and you can very quickly do that. And as well, we control what clients see, so that's a big win for us.
So I mentioned earlier that the DMP, as I said, it's kind of central to what we do, and it's been a real key component to our pitch process. I guess some of the interesting stories that have come out in the last year is for one particular client, when we started pitching for their business, we noticed there were about six quite clearly defined audiences. And one of those audiences was a student, I guess reflected a student demographic. And what we found was quite interesting, or what they found was interesting in the data, is they'd been debating this for at least 12 months in their organization. They weren't convinced that the student population was right for them. So they were about to, I guess, change the way in how they marketed so they didn't attract the student demographic anymore. Our insight basically changed their mind, and they're just about to roll out a beta where they're trialing a student version of the business just to try and see if they can attract more custom. So while all the basic stuff is great, one of the things that I'm amazed to see is how seriously some clients, some brands really take this data and what it can do to their business. There's one thing to change the way that you talk to customers in terms of brand guidelines, but this is effectively being a real, driver to changing the way that a business operates. And they're investing some serious money into this secondary brand, which is fantastic.
Right, so I'm just going to cover quickly, if any of you might be interested. So what's our setup? How do we use Lotame internally within our company? So essentially, you have Lotame platform, and then we take the data out of it and we use the API query and we use a software called R programming, which is essentially like a Python platform. It's open source. It has millions of packages that allows you to do all sorts of crazy stuff, whatever you want to do with the data. And essentially, once you bring the data into the R, then this is where we normalize it so that it's ready to, for example, for comparison between two audiences, because you cannot just like right off the bat compare two audiences. You need to normalize the data. So, for example, this thing can do it. And then once we generate all this stuff at the background, then we send it to Amazon Web Services, and then we host our app in there, and it sits there and it's widely available. Currently, it's just audience insights based on audiences that we created, but in the future, it will have as well campaign data, so you will see exactly which audience performed better versus others in terms of like CTRs and so on and so on. Obviously, it requires a bit more development, but that's the kind of ambition that is behind it. And in terms of where we want to take it, in the future, so obviously the activation channel is the token, double click, but it can be anything that we want. And then essentially what we will be using is using the data transfer product, which is a new kind of offering from Google DoubleClick, which gives you a view into a hit level data in terms of impressions and clicks and conversions that go through Floodlight tag. And it can be anything. It can be your paid social, it can be your YouTube, it can be your AdWords or whatever. And then we will what we will try to do, this is is to essentially match the DMP IDs and whatever IDs we get from there, and that will give us a quite rich overview of our activities with our clients, and it can open all sorts of different doors when it comes to attribution, some very advanced bespoke reporting, you name it. It's currently in planning, but it's in very advanced planning. So hopefully we'll get there by end of this year, and we'll share next year hopefully how it went. And then once you bring all this data into one sort of source, it can be anything. It can be, we will use in our example a BigQuery, which will be hosting the raw data from Lotame and raw data from all sorts of other providers that we use. And then you can do a lot of things. So once you have all this raw data, you don't have to necessarily use Watson, which probably costs a fortune to do, but you can use a lot of free like machine learning algorithms that are available currently today. They don't cost anything. It just requires obviously some investment from your side to build a team that understands how to engage it. But imagine that now you can plug this data that you have into any sort of, well, not any, but a machine learning that can help you to determine prior to your campaign how this audience will perform based on machine learning. So imagine that you create, for example, 15 audiences, and you can score them prior to campaign and immediately remove the ones that didn't score high based on machine learnings. And so on. So this is our ambition for the next couple of months. I think it will open as well a lot of opportunities to upsell our services to clients in terms of additional reporting, in terms of like very custom attribution solutions. Or I think it will be quite interesting to see. But I'm really excited. And that's it, really. And now I guess, so that was a bit of introduction to our story with Lotame. I would say that we're quite new to this space still. We're still learning a lot.
So I guess this is one good story for us to tell, and it's our final story, really. The reason we've pinpointed this one is, I guess, the industry recognition that we've received for it as well. So it has been shortlisted for a couple of awards this year so far. So I'm sure you're all familiar with Superdry. We've been working with these guys for a number of years now, but part of this challenge, I guess, was we managed their programmatic, but only during Q4, and that's purely to support their big campaigns. And every year, again, if you're a customer, you know that if you're a customer and you like their jackets, you should only buy them in Q4 because it's 50% off. I didn't say that. So, so one of the key things for us to do was to try and, I guess, raise awareness, but also convince existing customers that they should be buying yet another jacket, even though they probably bought one last year. And the good thing about, or the interesting thing about Superdry is they refuse to discount. When it comes to Black Friday, it's all about limited editions, it's about exclusives, that kind of thing. They build all the creative themselves, and the creative is amazing. It's all video driven. And what we wanted to do, some of the teams actually here, just over there in the corner, was to Wojciech's point, is to A/B test. So we'd already ran activity last year, and we knew that worked well. And this year it was about putting the DMP to test. So the DMP had been collecting data for a period of time, and it was effectively that A/B test to try and understand, was it about the machine learning, looking at the specific audiences that we've picked from Lotame, or was it really repeating the efforts that we went into last year, where we'd, like most people from a programmatic perspective, had combined a combination of first-party data from our DSP pixel, but also the third-party data we bought through various publishers. And Lotame, added that additional value, and as you can see on the right-hand side, some of the numbers that we're able to achieve were absolutely fantastic. So hopefully the case study will be shared, and if anyone has any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer. But I guess to kind of round up, going back to that first slide.
Obviously, they've got a big footprint offline through retail stores.
Absolutely.
Were you able to bring that into DMP or use that data?
We haven't yet, but we have, a couple of years ago, we did do a beacon test with Google, which was interesting. I wouldn't say it was the most sophisticated test because, you've got Google data here, and then the output of that was to try and influence your paid campaign as a result of that. So it was almost a delayed reaction. But because we've done that once, and because the client has bought into the advantages of the DMP, I would like to see stuff like that happening moving forward.
Where are you finding talent to hire to perform this work?
Honestly, it's difficult. I mean, to be honest, I always knew that Wojciech was fantastic. He's always been a data head, someone that's just got on with it. And to be honest, managing an Nespresso account, especially the B2B component, was never an easy task, but he just got on with it without complaint. But it's difficult. And I think one of the ways we've managed a lot of what we've achieved has been through automating some of the manual processes. So the platform that we've just talked you guys through helps massively. So in that instance, we're working with a financial client right now. There's a big project that's covering over 3 months. They've asked for something like
20 reports.
There you go, 20 reports. The detail's insane, but it's amazing to see that the client really cares that much. But the automation of the data is there. The analysis part is actually just working with our grad team. I say just, but they are very smart. Any other questions?
But just to add to this, I think we're moving into an era where very you will require to have a very interesting mix of skills to really succeed. And I think having somebody who is really good with data and knows things about machine learning. I think today it's a buzzword, but I think this is where things are going, and all those big players. Probably you follow the media. They invest millions, if not billions, of dollars into artificial intelligence, and I think the future is that, as the founder said before, is that within a couple of years' time, it will be just like you wouldn't even think about it. This is how you just do business. So the quicker you get into that space, I guess the better for you. That's what I would add to this.
And I guess to round up, that first slide where we looked at the 3 things that we wanted to try and solve, I wouldn't say we've solved them. I think we're on a journey. I think what probably will start keeping me up at night from January onwards is the 2 big media players, Google and Facebook. They are building their own DMPs, if not already there. And it unfortunately just makes this even more complicated. But I think we obviously all need to work together to push along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.